Hello and welcome to West Fox. We have a special treat. The three brothers are here on our debut episode of Brotherly Predictions. And we have many things to talk about. And today's topic is Star Trek Picard, the new Star Trek show coming out here in just about, I think, a week or two. A little bit. Neither of us really care too much about the show. We all grew up with Star Trek. I don't think any of us are too excited yet. But we wanted to throw our, 2 cents out there on predictions of the show, mostly because there's some things that have been said recently from Patrick Stewart and other showrunners, and kind of just wanted to dissect that a little bit. Fingers crossed, maybe we'll luck out, but based upon what we're seeing and hearing, it's not going to be a winning show. And I'm going to let these guys introduce themselves. Go ahead, Mr. Middle Brother.
Joining him is his brothers, Joe and Phil and Christopher, and I is Philip.
Okay.
Welcome.
And I'm Christopher, and I just want to say thank you for having me on, brothers. It's awesome to finally be on the show after
What a
getting here
suck
on the
up.
other episodes. Hey,
It's
what
a pleasure.
knockoff.
All right. So recently, Patrick Stewart had an interview with, I believe it was Variety, and had a bunch of comments come out about the tone, the shift of tone of the show, and kind of the initial thoughts. And we're not going to break down too much on that. Anybody who wants to have has any specific thoughts, we'll get into that a little bit here. But the biggest thing that I saw was it's a continuation of a pattern. So we've had many shows be rebooted, continued seasons, and they have taken the characters and aged them up, which I think is, in concept, is awesome. To take characters that were from the 90s, like Picard, Star Wars, Star Trek, all this stuff, and be like, hey, now it's 20, 30 years later. Where are these characters now? Now, in concept, I believe that is amazing, and it should be something spectacular to be able to enjoy as a longtime fan growing up with the franchise. Unfortunately, what they've done so far in other franchises, we don't know what they're going to do yet in Star Trek, but our comments will come back to that. What they've seemed to have done, though, is freeze the characters in time from the last time we saw them, and then let them degrade almost back to before we even met them, and then they brought them back into it. So according to the interviews with Patrick Stewart and stuff like that, we're going to meet a kind of broken down Picard, and that to me mirrors very much of where Luke Skywalker was in The Last Jedi. So now we have multiple franchises with these characters. Even the upcoming James Bond is like a retired and miserable James Bond. So I keep seeing this pattern of taking characters instead of them going, hey, you know what? They finished their life. They had their happy ending. And now we're moving on into the next level of adventure, right? Something happened. They need to mentor the next future because they were successful in their journey. But now there's a new journey that they need to be part of because they're so good. They instead put these characters in a location that they're literally broken people. And then now we got to reboot them as a character. And I think that's a really sad thing, because now you take a character that has, me and Chris were talking the other day, and Picard was the Federation. He was like the ideals of the Federation. He was a strong captain and leader, and he had such influence in the space. To me, the idea that he would be like, oh, I'm over the Federation is crazy. That's like Kirk saying, I don't want to be captain of the Enterprise ever again. Like, what shift in personality would cause someone who has such faith in the system to lose that faith and just reject it? And they can say, oh, it's because the death of Data and, those adventures. I think that's a weak level, because Picard is way better as an individual than that, to allow something like that to essentially destroy him. So what are your guys' thoughts on that?
There's a lot to be said about it. I think the first thing I'd like to say is kind of, to kind of talk about those the articles that you were talking about from Variety. I think the first thing that gets to me is, I guess, like what kind of hard about it, and then like you're saying, the degradation of a character. The first words here and that saying, I think what we're trying to say is important. Beyond that, Patrick Stewart's words, the world of next generation doesn't exist anymore. It's different. Nothing is really safe. Nothing is really secure. And I think just in general, if you're going to be starting a show that clearly you're going for a nostalgia factor and kind of trying to bring back the TNG fans, to hear that off the beginning then is already kind of troubling. I'd put it that way. It kind of, because you're already going, so you're telling me the world that I know exists doesn't. And then continue on a little bit later, he kind of says something saying, in relation to current political events going on, why hasn't the Federation changed? Why hasn't Starfleet changed? Maybe they're not as reliable and trustworthy as we all thought. Why are we destroying institutions that have been usually viewed in a somewhat positive light? The Federation or the Jedi. Why is it now that these new ones, they're first off the bat to say, we want to bring you back, but the first things out of your mouth are, we're destroying what you understand already. The institutions you liked, the characters you cared for, well, they're not going to be that, but come and watch.
I think this just goes to show that for all time, Kirk is clearly the better captain than Picard. This is the difference between an American man in Iowa who was in the rough years of the Federation having to brave the new world out there by himself, as opposed to a Frenchman who's played by a British actor. His ideals, his mindset are Frenchy, and they're not going to change whether in the 24th century or the current 21st century. And the bottom line is he's the one who's running the image of his character, and he doesn't care about Star Trek. It's meaningless to him. While he may have enjoyed portions of it, he may have enjoyed what he did partially. I mean, I remember the old documentaries back when I sludged through TNG, where he was like, yeah, my plan was to do this for a year, and then I figured it'd be canceled and I can go on and do what I wanted to do with my life and blah, 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 blah. And then once he was done, he removed himself from the circuit. He never really participated in doing anything. This was something that he couldn't have cared less about. He was just another actor playing another role. And now he's using it as an agenda transport vehicle to push what he wants to push. And so then I look at that and I think to myself, well, let's look at William Shatner. William Shatner loves going to conventions, loves interacting with people, talking to people. And while I'm separating the actors from the characters on one hand, on the other hand, these are actually the ideals of the same people very similarly. And it doesn't surprise me to watch a British leftist not care about Star Trek and participate in its destruction, because it doesn't matter to him. He has something he wants to push, and everyone else in that production has something they want to push. And so for the Federation to be now the monsters that they kind of always really were for the liberal utopia side, but now they want to make it look like it's current year United States. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me, and it's going to be a joke. It's going to suck. It's going to be pathetic, and they will probably pour millions of dollars into it. They'll probably make sure it runs for 2 or 3 seasons just to make it seem like, hey, this was successful, but we're going to go somewhere else and go a different way now so that they don't lose, market share.
Yeah. I mean, I pretty much agree with everything you said there. I mean, what can you say? I think that it's unfortunate that, that is kind of the documented part of that. Sometimes these actors don't care so much about the properties that they're in, which is fair at the same time, because, for them, it is work, regardless of when they started. But what I think is the crazy part is that no one along the lines cares about it. That's kind of the broader scale, or no one along the production side is like, you know what? This is a bad choice for this, right? That's where on the production side, you're like, oh, does no one go, does this fit canon? Does this fit the story? The whole Star Trek timeline is really messed up now because due to all the Kelvin stuff, and obviously on the, the real world side, because of licensing issues and who owned what at what time. That's what created the whole needs to be 30% different type thing. And so you have,
because I was curious on that, Joe, because so that is confirmed that is something so they have to be 30% different because of licensing issues than
from what
TNG.
I know, and I'm sure if someone watches this, they can correct us, and sure someone has different opinions on it.
Because I've heard 25% or something
number,
around that number, but there had to be different.
That no longer technically applies because everything's owned again by Paramount CBS. I think there was a licensing thing at one time. I think it's all been shifted because people buying each other out and stuff. I could be wrong on that. I don't know all the details because it was always really murky anyway. So, but we do know they're kind of.
But
blending.
let's be honest, it doesn't matter.
Well, we know they're kind of blending. what they're doing is that because they care more about the Kelvin timeline than they do about the original timeline. So pretty much the end of like what we consider normal Star Trek really ended with Voyager. I never really liked Enterprise. I thought it was just
horrible,
not as good of a show.
Enterprise's problem is kind of the same problem that this one's going to be having now. Again, you're rewriting history and you're changing things. I mean, Enterprise's biggest problem was they went through and everything that Kirk did, just kidding, Archer did about 10 years before, and you go, no, don't ruin my characters. The ship looks awesome, though.
What made me excited when this show was announced was the idea that this was the first Star Trek to actually go forward in the future in the last 20 years. And I was like, oh, so we're actually going forward, which I've been saying that was the biggest mistake they haven't done. They have refused to go past where Voyager was. In the past, it always went, every show was farther in the future. And now all of a sudden they're like, nope, we're not going farther in the future. We're just going to keep going back and repeating, like Discovery. Oh, we're going right behind this thing. It's like, stop, quit redoing it. Now we're stuck in a time lane where we're like, this is really boring. And so prediction wise, my biggest concern is I have a feeling if I was to say, what are some top predictions for me personally, and I'll let you guys do your top three. Let's just say we'll do three and then we can kind of throw some more out there. We might think of something. I have a feeling that majority of screen time for the characters will be cameo based. I think a lot of what we've seen in the trailers is going to be pretty much what their screen time is. You'll see 3 minutes of Picard, a little more Picard. You'll probably see like he'll be a cameo character. It's kind of around more. But I think the show being called Star Trek Picard is like in the same vein as calling The Last Jedi The Rise of Skywalker. There's no Skywalker in the movie. And I feel like there's a good chance that this movie is going to be in the same vein that, Picard's in it this much, along with the other cast. They're going to be like, oh, nostalgia moment. I think we're going to see that very heavily. Same thing. So I guess it'd be number 2. Tons of nostalgia thrown in. They're going to be like, how can we pull in this nostalgia moment? Now, granted, Star Trek's a little more complicated for that because, there's not as many like iconic locations. We'll see Starfleet headquarters in San Francisco. They'll have a bunch of like transporter references, nerdy talk that they think is cool. Those kind of things. And then I think the other thing that you're going to see is really bad dialogue. They kind of allude to it in the interview, talking about, oh, you're going to hear F-bombs. And I'm like, man, that's not Star Trek. That's the same thing when Quentin Tarantino was talking about an R-rated Star Trek. You know what? If a Star Trek's R-rated, it's because the content is so awesome that kids can't handle it. Not because it should be like, oh, why is it R? Well, we had a bunch of random sex scenes in it, and we had a lot of F words dropped in it. To me, that's not what makes a good movie, is having random sex scenes and a bunch of swear words. Like, honestly, I think it is just in general here. I think it's so stupid that movies that are PG-13 can have one F-bomb in it. If you've already done the F-bomb, what's it matter? Just, why does that have to have one? Why couldn't it just be 0 F-bombs? If you do an F-bomb, it's an R-rated movie. And to me, 99% times F-bombs are dropped, it's worthless anyway. So to me, when they're like, oh, we're going to throw characters going to be throwing F-bombs, I'm like, that's the same modern, again, that goes in the same modern slang of dialogue that I had trouble with, because parallel here with Rise of Skywalker, where characters are like, that's cool. The stormtroopers see the Knights of Ren, they're like, oh, those guys are cool. And I'm like, what franchise am I watching? Because cool is not a Star Wars movie.
Spaceballs.
Cool is not a word it'd be like watching Lord of the Rings and being like, Gandalf being like, what's up, dude? That's tubular move, man. And you're like,
no, his words would have been, after doing something amazing, wasn't that wizard, kids?
God, that's rough. So, Philip,
well, to go to your dialogue,
pretty
Joel,
wizard, wasn't it, son? Come on.
Wizard. Just to comment on your dialogue, you know why that people can't write these things, and the only reason they, like you said, they use the F-bomb all the time, that's probably the way that the culture there is. I'm sure that the only time any of those characters or actors or people present ever string a sentence along that isn't a curse word is if it's written in their script. It would not surprise me that the environment there, they probably dropped the F-bomb all the time. It's probably the number one most used word in their vocabulary. So it doesn't surprise me that it finds itself in scripts all the time. And then when they don't put in scripts because it's PG-13 or whatever, then they have stilted dialogue because they don't know how people talk. They don't understand what language is because their language has devolved into 5 curse words and whatever syntax and grammar is required to string those things along. And that's kind of the level that we're at. And I agree with you. If you're going to have a rated R Star Trek, it better just be because of violence and not like obscene, gratuitous violence, but things like Braveheart violence.
Braveheart's a great example.
Saving Private Ryan. Yeah, not Quentin Tarantino violence, just realistic. You know, if there was really a fight in space and people were really at war with each other, this is what it would look like. That's fine. But other than that, there's no reason to have it. And again, Star Trek's never been designed like that. If you wanted to do that, that's more Star Wars area. Star Trek wouldn't be designed like that. It's supposed to be cerebral. Even that's kind of a little bit too high of a level to be called for Star Trek. It's pretty simpleton actually for most Star Trek, and it all leans one
it's sci-fi. I mean,
way.
There's very few true cerebral. But what are your predictions though? So what do you think are some predictions for you, Philip? And then we'll get to you, Christopher.
Man. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's kind of hard to predict on one hand because the part of me is I couldn't care less about Star Trek anymore. Again, I got my handful of episodes that are great episodes that I can watch 100 times and have no issues. I can never watch any of the rest of the series. And
you got to play the game. Not that game. We got to play our game.
All right. Play the rules. Learn the rules. Okay. Predictions. Christopher, go first.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say to your point though, Philip, about it saying that, it's not as cerebral. I was reading up that even J.J. Abrams, when he was doing the new Star Treks back in 2008 or 9, he even said himself, they're so intellectual, it's really hard to know how to write them, which I sit there and I go, then what the heck are you doing this, J.J.? Jar Jar,
not to mention they're really
but it's like
they're not really that intellectual. I mean,
they're not
like
that intellectual, but so I agree with you. But I'm saying then the guy who then has to go and say, "Well, they're really intellectual." It's kind of tough. It's like, okay,
the
then
closest
you clearly
one
should be nowhere near this property.
If you was an intellectual one, right? Okay, I give you a good example of what I would say. The closest to good intellectual we've had would be First Contact and Data and the Borg Queen. Because that would be,
I would
if
agree.
I was probably one for the most modern stuff, I think that would, First Contact is probably one of the best Star Trek. I'd say the two that are great. The two best Star Trek movies have the most intellectual elements. Wrath of Khan, obviously, and First Contact. Those two have the most intellectual element because Wrath of Khan, dude, they don't even ever meet each other in person in that movie. The two, our antagonist and our protagonist, are on separate ships the entire time. They don't have a fisticuff in the middle of it because one of them transport over. No, the entire time they are on separate ships trying to outwit each other. And granted, the movie's pretty solid. The biggest mistake they made the biggest only
Sulu or Chekhov.
No, that was fine. No, that was fine.
Just who cares?
The only mistake that they made in that movie for me is the fact that when Spock told Kirk, raise the shields because they're not responding, he said, no, just raise the low level. That was the only mistake. That was the mistake.
Enough.
Something that would never happen.
That was the only mistake in that movie. If other than that, I would say I'm sure someone can nitpick it, but for me, that was always the one that you're like, why, Kirk? And again, that's a little bit of writing where I'm like, I think we could have a little better reason why. Maybe, we're sending a shuttle across and
there's a garbled message. We can't quite make it out.
That could have.
So maybe there's still some friendly factor that you're thinking.
They just have to rewrite the whole situation because there would be absolutely no reason why you would never have your defensive shields on if you can't make contact with someone.
So
that's true.
He said it should have been a different reason. Like, other than that. And then First Contact. So you had that. Okay. And then you go into First Contact. And I said, look at when Picard's dealing with the white whale thing. That's a great analogy. Like that. Your white whale, when she's freaking calling him out on his attitude. You have Data and the Borg Queens. The
line is drawn here.
You have the Borg Queen and Data debating kind of him literally dealing with his own desire to be more human. Like, that's great stuff. And then, those are the great examples of that. So Go ahead, Christopher. I know it's a whole segue, but go ahead.
No, you're good. I know because there's a lot down that. Predictions wise, first prediction wise, I somewhat agree with you, Joel, and I somewhat don't. I don't know if Picard might be his cameo. I don't know if he might be as his cameo.
Okay.
I think a lot of the other characters might, but I also think they might not. But I base this also on the fact that there's 3 comics to set up this whole entire series that apparently gives you the backstory on all these characters that you're gonna see. Like the female first officer, I guess, is the kind of girl with the black lady with the frilly hair.
I don't know her name. Yeah.
Michael Burnham.
She apparently she's the first officer from his prior ship that he just had after the Enterprise, and a part of this whole countdown comic book series that's setting up for this. So, first off, prediction: I'm not gonna care about any of these characters because any character development's been done in a comic book series setting it up. So
yeah.
You already lost me there. I'm done because it sounds like the whole setup for why this is happening is all set up in comic books before the series.
Yep, don't care about that.
How can I care and even want to get interested in that?
You have 8 episodes that make me care about this. Just recently, we obviously, you and me, Christopher, watched the show The Witcher, and I hope to review here in the future on that. But hey, that show took 8 episodes and made me care about the characters. So if you can't make me care about the characters in this 8 episodes, I think it's 8 episodes in this too. You can't make me care about.
I think, because he said it's 10. I think Patrick Stewart said it's 10 hours altogether. So I don't know if that might be then 10
close enough. So say between 8 and 10 episodes. If you can't make me care about the characters that I already care about, with a couple extra little ones added in, you're not even starting to do your job as a writer.
Yeah, I agree. Second prediction. I don't know if if you guys have seen the trailer, it almost looks like there is now more Data type androids other than before, because they have that one scene where you see the pale faced people and they have the numbers on top and they look like androids. They look like they're kind of going for the Data android look. So I'm kind of curious, and I've heard then from these prior things in the Children of Mars or something, not Children of Mars, that's Doctor Who, I think. But it's like the little mini episode that came out, setting this all up for Picard again. They're showing that it's like there's an attack on Mars and there's something that's saying like synthetics are attacking.
Like that. Yeah, see there.
So I'm wondering if there might be some kind of sense of
so are they ripping off Seth MacFarlane and his show then with the whole plot line of those robot aliens trying to attack the Federation? Them stealing more stuff from the
Well, and there's some talk that I saw then people kind of making the mention that it was like it was Picard then who fought for the rights of synthetic beings. So there's some talk about them saying like maybe these people, I think it's one of the episodes with Data that he they kind of give the right to, and then I think they kind of doubled down on it then with the EMH for Voyager episode.
Yeah, those were okay. I'm
not saying what I'm saying. I'm wondering if there's a set though. I'm wondering if there's might be a portion of this that if it is the synthetic beings attacking and of their own free will, if there's some contrived BS of somehow blaming Kirk or Picard because of his push for that.
So,
like I said, so here's one thing. I don't understand how he's going to get disillusioned with the Federation other than some BS contrivance.
We know that.
I thought it was because Romulus blew apart. I thought that was the issue. I mean, I didn't read the Countdown comic or any of that junk. The
Countdown comic. Now, what I've heard from the Countdown comic is he's going to Romulus with his new ship and the first in command. That's that lady. They go to the planet. They're trying to pick up some of the Romulans, and then they find out that the Romulans also have another beings there, some native beings there that the Romulans are like, oh, they're not sentient enough for us to care, so we didn't tell you guys about them. At which point Picard goes, well, we're gonna save all of them, or I'm not gonna take the ship. Going against kind of creating a fuss and then going against the Federation's order. So I've also heard that going on. So again, it's already the setup of
overly complicated.
Big bad Federation.
It's already, like I said,
it's not Star Trek. I mean, and I laugh because one of those things that Patrick Stewart did say in that article was we're continuing the Gene Roddenberry vision, and I'm going, I don't see that. Now, I admit, we all know that Gene Roddenberry definitely had some social issues that Star Trek has in there that's always been talked about. There's a little bit of that
utopian. I mean, again, is utopian based
But it was exactly. It was more utopian based, and now they're going for this whole change.
The whole point was it was optimistic.
Yeah.
Like it was an optimistic space.
Yes, it was a brighter future to come. There was always that push for brighter. And now they're just going, well, we're continuing that by not going down a brighter future.
How does that work?
Nothing
with the war
nothing
in
is
DS9?
safe. Nothing is secure. Nothing is safe. Nothing is secure. But we're going for the Gene Roddenberry vision.
What about the D69 war?
That doesn't work.
What I was just saying is that's funny when we talk about the vision. We're so far removed from the Gene Roddenberry vision because if we were going to talk about a utopia,
well, Gene Roddenberry dealt with there was the Romulan Wars.
There's no wars in utopias.
Again, you can't have no conflict.
No, those are border neutral
Okay.
skirmishes. In utopias, you can't have a war.
Okay, so Christopher, number 2.
I'm just saying. I mean, we talk about this utopia thing with no currency and all this other stuff, and it sounds wonderful.
Oh, it sounds wonderful, but
it sounds ridiculous. But then when they actually act it out on what's going on, there's no utopian. It's all some pseudo moralism that they're talking about and going through.
There's always money, Phil.
I mean,
and what the money is
butt.
called time. Your currency is your time and your intelligence. It's actually, if you think about it, the Federation.
It's communist. It's terrifying.
No. Actually, if you think about it, probably is that it's actually a true egalitarian system. Is that the right word? No, it's a system. It's not equality. It's a true meritocracy. It's a utopian meritocracy. So, like, you think,
otherwise known as a fantasy.
Well, I'm saying is because it's totally based upon your skill and drive as a person, because
and based off that people would actually do their best, want to do their best, and
that's the thing behind it. Is everyone generally is trying to be the best they can be.
I think that's an assumption you're making.
Because that's what the whole point of what he was saying in the original stuff. The creator Gene Roddenberry was like, a truly enlightened. Right? You're like, how do you take...
Right.
So humanity is slowly removed. So humans, being the fallen creatures that we are, slowly pulled away some of those fallen things, right? And you're like, if we took away... Let's say everyone has like 100, right? And like, you're 50% good, 10% greedy, 10% liar, 5%, whatever, 20% lazy. And then say, okay, we've sliced away like 30% of that lower 50%. And now we've put it into like loyalty and other elements. Okay, there's still greed, there's still elements, but there's more positive sides to us. Now we're more loyal. Now we're less likely to lie, less likely to steal. Again, it's sci-fi. And I'll take this over the dystopian stuff that we get fed on every other franchise.
Sure.
Too.
I completely agree. I would definitely
take right now. Every franchise is like, so after World War V, and now everything's sad, and everyone hates.
After a certain controller and powerful person got into a certain office, we won't name names who, all of a sudden the world has become bleak and all the worlds have died.
And there's a random orange hue
And then
everywhere.
you look at like, even like Halo, and we're totally sidetracking here. Look at like Halo, the idea between the whole, the Forerunners and their stuff. Technically, Halo world is dystopian, right? In the sense of that we're actually in a dystopian future. But what makes it cool was it was a larger archy story that actually went somewhere. Most problem with movies and stuff that deals with dystopians, like,
well, sadly now though they're doing exactly the same thing that they're doing with it because they went back to establishment, the UNSC, and bad government, bad people, bad this. Everything's back to dystopian, and it's all the humanity's
because we're number 2. Or 3.
Number 2, and I think just in general, or 3, I don't remember, but I put it this way: I don't find myself interested. I've always enjoyed Patrick Stewart. Enjoy him as an actor. I've always liked what he's done on there. This isn't going to be his best material. This is going to probably be the last thing he does, and I think it's going to have probably.
It won't be his last thing he does, but yeah, I think it'll be his last Star Trek.
Well, yeah, I mean, if it doesn't, but in general, I think this will. I bet this you might have a few more people off the onset who are going to. The viewership is going to be higher than Discovery was for, I think, maybe like the first 2 weeks.
Really, you think so?
I think it will, but I think it'll have a quicker drop off than afterward.
I think
personally,
there's only 10 episodes, so not 24. Where's it airing? Do we know what it's airing on?
It's CBS Access, so you have to buy CBS Access.
Yeah. See, I'll let you finish your things.
He's really busy.
I think that would be my last one. Like I said, it doesn't feel Star Trek. It feels like Patrick Stewart's character now doesn't even seem like Picard. I know someone else has said, I think it was Nerdrotic, but I had the same feeling. He looks like more like his Logan character.
Yeah.
He seems more of that character than he seems
I never
of
saw
Captain
Logan,
Picard.
so I'll have to see it eventually. I heard it's really good, but
Yeah, it's actually, I mean, really good is an overstatement, but watching Patrick Stewart mope around and have his issues as a decrepit old man was actually very, I'll admit, was very pulling.
He's a great actor. That's what's so sad.
Some great parts.
That's what the opening part of this was. It was so sad because you have such great characters to pull from. I mean, even showing like just even that little bit with Data and him sitting across from each other, even because, you know, in Nemesis, they kind of teased that he kind of, that he had downloaded himself into B4, that he'd actually kind of started kind of merging into a single.
Well, apparently that is canon because that was in Countdown. So that is exactly what happened.
I think in now, not anymore, in other canon sources, because everything's about rewriting canon now, Data actually was a captain at some point. He had his own ship and stuff.
Yeah, in the Countdown. Right. Yeah, and that was the B4 body with the Data mind.
Like, I feel like, you know, like Data and Geordi and Picard. I mean, like I said, I love the Next Generation crew. I think that, like I said, I love, they all had their different things. They said Star Trek did such a good job with their crews, to be honest. I would say D69 is my least memorable cruise, but I enjoyed the show overall.
Definitely.
But I think that like D69, you had Worf, you had the dynamic of Worf and Data and Geordi. I mean, like Geordi and Data's like friendship as it built over time was so solid. And like I said, you know, Geordi, LeVar Burton, I don't think we'll see him in this. I could be wrong. He'd be so, I mean, man, I grew up with LeVar Burton. Between Next Generation and Reading Rainbow, like,
Reading Rainbow, like, but don't take my word for
that,
it.
Right? Exactly. So, like, you know, like he was so good, and he was such a good character.
Yeah.
We walked through him in the movies. So again, I hope they don't ruin it. They're going to ruin some stuff.
Well,
I just hope they don't ruin every character.
They're going to ruin something. Here, I guess this kind of brought actually what I'd say my last prediction is. You're not going to have, I doubt you're going to have, maybe, because I guess as like the main character, I don't know who the girl's supposed to be or what that's all about, but I doubt in the same way that the other series have had that you're going to have that character who's trying to find their humanity that the other series have always had. That was kind of an interesting thing, or at least something that was always prevalent. You either had the EMH in 7 of 9, you had Data, you had Ordo, or those ones. Right. Maybe not to the same degree, but you had Spock, who was always, at least, he wasn't trying to become human, but he was at least trying to understand what the heck Kirk and McCoy are going through in a more fun way. It was more of a more meant for the amusement, but then everyone else, like the later characters, Tuvok or B'Elanna from Voyager, even themselves, those people who were trying to find something. And I feel like you're not going to have that in this. There's not going to be that character that you kind of go, I'm kind of seeing them trying to go through something. You're going to see this destroyed Picard doing whatever because he's disillusioned with the Federation to help this girl figure herself out, which again is pretty much in one way or another almost kind of the small plot line of Logan.
Yeah, and that's the picture I'll talk about after. I'll let Philip go ahead with his thoughts at least. And you don't do, you know, like I said, the idea is that with some thoughts, even if you don't really have predictions, just give us 2 interesting things that you think might happen in the show.
Well, I think apart from actually inside the show, I think it's going to suck, of course. I mean, we all know it's going to blow. The question is to what degree. I disagree with Christopher. I think that I think it's going to do rather poorly, and I think it's going to do poorly quickly.
You think it's going to be DOA?
I think it's going to find itself. Yeah, I think it's going to find itself lower than Discovery. I understand that TNG, since it's significantly closer to the Star Trek universe, is very well beloved. But I think there's been a lot of mediocre to complete and utter trash that's been between the end of TNG and this coming out, that a lot of people are just don't care anymore. And a lot of people put off. And sure, you're going to have the hardcore Star Trek fans who are going to watch it. And at first I would think to myself, yeah, as Christopher said, having CBS All Access is going to be something that's hinders. On the other hand, I know people who spend money on Hulu and Netflix and Access and NBC and all this stuff. And I go, how much money do you spend on these on these subscriptions? And they're spending just as much as they used to on cable, 10 years ago.
It's true.
So I don't think that doesn't seem to be a hindering factor anymore, which is kind of astonishing and startling to me. So I don't think it'll be an issue of access that's a problem.
I don't know if CBS Access is as strong as that streaming that has that strong of a fan base compared to Netflix, Hulu.
Well, it's not an issue of fan base in this respect. What I'm saying is that if people actually want to see this, having to pay for CBS All Access will not be prohibitive.
Well, and
we've seen that with The Mandalorian.
Whatever, I guess, like I said, that's
exactly.
But I mean,
you wait till the end when they all come out, and then you just get the subscription, you watch them all, and then you end it.
Well, that's my point. And so I think it's going to do rather poorly. I don't think it's going to show now. Number two prediction is the spin machine that we've seen around Rise of Skywalker will look like pikers compared to the spin that is going to be produced when this thing is not doing very well.
Because isn't this also done by people who are within the Bad Robot?
Secret hideout crew. That's who's participating in some of this stuff. Yeah, well, that's the third thing.
I think he's still involved.
Oh, that's right. I think he's somewhat involved. But
I don't know. It's the same. But it's the same group of people who don't.
Already gone.
Well, he was originally the first showrunner. He was originally the first showrunner, and then he got replaced by Michael Chabon, who's not going to be returning for the season 2 run. So, and that was the other thing that's going to come on. I think we're actually going to be very, very shocked at the piss poor production value. I think it's going to be bad. I really do. I think it's going to be Star Trek Rise of Skywalker bad in that we saw, it's going to be weird Star Trek cuts, emo, odd things.
Star Trek emo.
Star Trek emo. Yeah, exactly. I think it's going to be for the amount of money that's going to have been spent and wasted on this show. We know that while there have been movies and television shows that have terrible productions, and then they've actually been very successful, it just out of sheer fortune because of good storytelling. What we have here is clearly these organizations like Bad Reboot, like Secret Hideout, and any of their kind of ancillaries are very clearly very incompetent people. And it's astonishing that when you start to look at the names and the faces and the people who are always surrounded with people who are being fired or replaced, and then you realize the product that's coming out, you realize, oh my gosh, these people are literally a cabal of incompetent people who have somehow made themselves they can access some of these high-powered money studios, and they go in there and create just a cluster of terrible stuff, and then people get fired and removed. And clearly there's people who enter into these spheres and they're like, oh my gosh, this is a crazy group of people, and either they get fired or they end up just removing themselves, saying, I don't want to be surrounded by these people. I don't want to have anything to do with these people. And we know they never say that out loud, right? When they're interviewed, oh, what happened, Bob? But they're just like, well, our visions are very different and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, exactly. It's like the equivalent for, oh, you got divorced. What happened?
I didn't want it to suck.
At the court.
Creative differences.
Yeah. I think that's going to be, again, if I was to say something that I was going to put into my level of kind of predictions again is, because again, there's some level of story prediction here too, because obviously you can talk the thing, but I think there's going to be a huge level of, I think they're bringing the Borg back, and I think the mistake to bring the mistake.
The Romulans are experimenting on Borg that are left because somehow the Romulans got it right, Borg, because we need the Romulans Borg again.
Are one of the greatest,
the Borg get captured?
Are one of the greatest sci-fi villains of all time, and to abuse them.
Tell us about it.
Is a sad thing, because they to overuse them, I should say. They're kind of like the Daleks in Doctor Who. You can't have them in every episode as a villain, because the reason they're terrifying is because they're except First Contact is the best example of their terrifyingness. That's like a horror movie, man. When you're a little kid, dude, they're just coming at you, man. They're
I wouldn't say actually First Contact is my scariest moment for them. It is that TNG episode, the tube. I think it's the best of both worlds.
Oh yeah, I think they're way scarier and later.
I mean, it's
Yeah,
like they're
they're
scary
too-
that one,
they're
but at
too
least that was a
goofy.
great one to show them at, especially when you go to Wolf 359
I mean,
and it's just all the
Borg-
ships are just
Borg-
gone. It was at least to show you the massive how
Borg
scary
Gen
they are.
1.
Well, it wasn't scary. It was power.
Well, Borg Gen 1.
That
Well,
was to
exactly.
show you how powerful
Well, that's
they
Gen
were.
1 Borg.
Well, and that's why you can't use them all
Yeah,
the
that
time
is
because
Gen
when
1
you are
Borg.
using them, you need to make sure that then it is a life or death, something. So it's like every episode can't be
I don't know
then
what I would do.
life and death. How do you
And the
beat
Borg
the
are hard
Borg?
because
Just like you
I don't know
couldn't
what
do
I
it.
would do with the Borg. Like the thing with the Borg is if you're like, oh,
I think Voyager did some of the best episodes with the
I think
Borg.
Borg.
Actually,
I
being
know
able
not
to have
everyone
some
likes it.
interesting
I think
things.
the Borg and Voyager overall were pretty successful, to be honest. I know there's some tribe stuff here and there, but overall, for a villain, for like a recurring villain in the space, I think they're pretty good. I think that the weakest part with the Borg trying to bring them back would be, oh, so now Janeway's sacrifice and things. Oh, the Borg are magically more powerful and they're back again.
Well, probably because in some comic book, someone went back in time and saved the Borg Queen for the fourth
Well,
time.
and I'm okay with her surviving one off because the whole thing with her was time travel and all. It was like reincarnations.
Or she found a forced dyad. Oh, sorry, wrong
Right.
series. My bad.
You know, I think that. Go ahead,
Well,
Phil.
I was gonna say with the Borg, you have to making them. I think one of the biggest disservices they did do to the Borg. While I love the Borg Queen, I think it's awesome. I think it's brilliant. The problem is the Borg were kind of seen as locust when they first, because it's this collective mindset and they just kind of go as they please, right? It's like, oh, okay, well, and we saw that in Voyager when 7 of 9 was getting brought back on the ship. I can't remember which episode, when they really wanted to assimilate a planet. When the Queen really wanted to assimilate a planet, she didn't send one cube.
She sent the fleet.
Like 60,
Right.
right? It was like, oh, yeah, we're going to decimate that place. They don't have a chance of survival and defeating us. What let the Voyager one survive was that they had to create an even more psychotic and scary creature, which was, of course, species 89742.
8472.
Right? And that is what 8472?
Species 8472.
Species 8472. Yeah. 89406. Yeah. 8472 is that
Phil's
was
trying to
what
sing a
they were
song
able
here.
to they were able to balance that out. And the 8472 wasn't necessarily wanted to be a conquering race. They just were pissed off that the Borg were interfering in their
See,
space.
now that actually, if I was to bring a villain back, Species 8472 would be an interesting one to bring in. Not saying it's the best, but that would be an interesting one to bring back for a shorter time thing, because they did have ideas of taking over the Federation at one time inside the story arc. So the idea that somehow continued
That
that
is
would
true.
really stay inside of canon and allow them to be, oh, are you guys taking over? Oh, you are. Crap. That kind of thing. I think that to me at least could be interesting. Am I saying it's the best idea I've ever heard? No, I can't at the time, but just based on what you said. But at least I feel as them as a villain, at least you could bring elements of those other things. Because again, the nostalgia, I say nostalgia, what are they going to bring back? The Borg. Again, I like the Borg are one of the greatest sci-fi villains, but when they're overused and used badly, which I'm afraid of, because I think that's going to be the Achilles heel of the show, is bringing things back. Like it goes into the thing. Okay, did you guys ever see the movie Ready Player One?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. We all yes, it was.
Boring.
So the biggest problem I had with the movie, and it was the flaw with the end. A lot of the games in there is the questions were the goal was to take over this guy's fortune, and it was like, oh yeah, nerdy culture, essentially nerdy culture, cool. But the thing that they messed up on was it was all the answers were just facts. They were just facts. Like, what's Gandalf's last name? And you're like, oh, okay, you can look it up, and you're like, but
Right.
they didn't ask the questions, and this is a smart AI system, so it's not like stupid. They didn't ask questions like, what's Gandalf's motivation, right? Or why does this character do this thing? What matters to this character? What are the elements? None of the questions. It was all just facts. Throw facts out there, dude. Anybody can find facts. Anyone can spew off facts, but you can't.
Right. Removing the psychological profile as opposed to just someone who
And
can
so,
just,
like, Star
Google
Trek's
search.
going to be, and
I
so
agree.
Star Trek's going to be a bunch of facts, right? Oh, there's an Enterprise. We'll have some kind of Enterprise F, right? They'll have the Enterprise F model, which would be cool. The Enterprise F did look pretty cool. So if they keep it the original model, it actually looks pretty cool. But they'll have that in there. Oh, like Enterprise. So keywords that will be used throughout it. Ready? Transporters, warp drive, subspace,
Prime directive.
Excellent one. Let's see what else. What other keywords we'll have? Photons,
phasers, warp drive.
So that one, yeah.
Of course, dilithium crystals.
Excellent. So those are, we're going to have a huge amount. If you think some questions, throw them out there. We have a huge number of.
Because I almost want to say field. I don't know if there will be. I almost have an opposite thought. I almost wonder if they're going to go so far away from it that you might not hear a lot of those things. I almost have to. Okay, I almost want to counter you guys on this.
Here we go. Ready? So we'll have to remember this. Ready? So, how many transporter accidents will happen during the show? I'm going with 2.
At least
Tilt
4.
says 4.
Goose egg. Okay, I'm going goose egg.
That's our transporter one. Okay, transporter accident.
Here's one thing they will have for sure. Somehow they'll have. No, honestly,
how many warp cores will be breached? 6.
First episode 5, like just straight up. No, I think there's certain ones they will have, but I don't think it will be all of them. I think there will be certain things that just definitely they don't want to touch on. I think they want to kind of separate it away from, because they kind of said it's like they want to separate from like the stereotypical safe, clean, yada yada yada. So I'm like,
well, that's different. Joel's talking nostalgia, not
I know,
themes.
But I think that nostalgia is a part of it. I don't think they're going to touch as much as I do not think there will be as many as you guys think there will be.
I'm personally like, where's your phaser? They're like, what's a phaser?
You might get a red shirt who dies.
They're like, oh, you mean my late.
There will be a red shirt that dies, but that's about it.
You mean my Fraser?
Like, oh no! Did I get my no? Yeah. Okay, so red shirt.
Set your phaser to stun. There you plus.
Go. Yes, that's what they'll say. I tell you,
how many red shirts will die? They'll say how many red shirts are going to die?
Oh, at least one. They will still have
high
one
or low.
Red shirt because if you don't have
high
a red shirt,
die. How many?
So if it's 10 episodes,
I'm going with 7.
I think at least
7. Definitely at least 4. I'm going 4. Definitely 4.
Red shirt.
Okay, 3. 7 for me. Felt 4.
And I bet one of them's the first episode.
Of course. No,
one of them will be assimilated.
That's fine. Assimilation. Assimilation counts as the death. That we'll say it counts as the death.
Yes.
Oh, and it has to be like an obvious red shirt.
That's what I'm saying.
We know what a red shirt moment is. It's obvious. It's not like that's not a.
Captain Picard, Riker, Geordi, and Wilson over there. You're wearing a red shirt, Wilson. Right? Yes, sir. Yeah. Get over here, Wilson. Yeah, we're gonna go on the planet together.
That kind of thing. Not like a. Oh, the ship that's over there blew up and it had a bunch of red shirts. No. The one thing.
No, because I mean they're already going back to the old school look, so you can see that you're gonna see like I think they said it's kind of going back to the old
badge. It was like an inverted
style.
comm badge. It was like this big on their chest, and I was like, oh, what are they?
I know it's like they're like the cutout that they would have put for the old badges, the outside of it. They're like, that's what we're gonna actually now use. And you're like, what are you doing?
It reminded me of like a belt buckle, like a Texas belt buckle, the ones that the cowboys have that are like just so big, they're like a dinner plate. And I'm like, are they wearing a Star Trek combat?
When I saw it, I wanted it. I wanted it as a belt buckle because I'm
gotta get that transceiver in there, and they're still very large.
No, well, if it was sideways, it wouldn't hurt so bad. But
everything's bigger in the Federation, right? Texas.
Well, and that goes into the isolationist thing. You're like, oh, we're gonna be we're in ice. They say, oh, the Federation is isolationist.
How can 500 planets that are locked together become isolationist? It doesn't work that way.
Of thousands of planets. Isolate themselves from the rest of the galaxy.
Well, and you're like, we own the alpha and beta quadrant. Like, and when I say own, I mean
we should own the delta quadrant.
Well,
at this
not yet.
point,
I mean,
man.
well, that's where they should have gone in the future. They should have gone in the future, and they should have had the newer warp drives. Yep. They should have. They said the biggest thing that what the next series should have been, and they keep ruining it with this future Star Trek stuff because they're dumb. Is they should have went to the 25th century and said, you know what, we're starting to explore other galaxies. Boom. Other galaxies, and then you could throw in new weird stuff, new weird aliens, have fun with it, and it could have a new adventure and without it being tight.
But you can't travel that fast. We found out that when you go warp 10,
you become a
degenerate into a fish lizard, and you want to like make out and have sex with your captain.
It's universally accepted as one of the worst episodes ever written for Star Trek.
It's because it is. It's the trash. It's trash. It's the dumbest thing ever.
They took an interesting concept and then like went, so we're going to break the warp 10 barrier, and it just made no sense with the science. And then they're like, so we're going to turn into a fish creature now with lizards and babies. And you're like, so technically there's like an alien race that's human.
Of Janeway.
Tom Harris is floating around in some lake somewhere, and you're like, okay, well, that happened.
That's
like choices that
she gives this. It's funny. They end the episode with her giving him like a weird look, like we're not going to discuss that. It's like, okay.
Yeah, right. Like, that never happened. Like, what about the record of the warp 10 jump? They're like, what warp 10 jump?
Exactly.
They should have just done.
Again,
the warp 10 thing was stupid because it didn't make sense in the sense of what. Anyway, yeah. So
yeah. Well, here can I leave it off on maybe just one last question for you guys, if anything. I guess it kind of works for Picard, but it also works just in general.
Do you run this channel, or does West Fox run this?
Is
channel?
Allowed to ask a question though. I will do the wrap up.
I can ask a question.
Gosh dang it. Drinking my coffee out of my Fox mug.
Do you guys, if it wasn't going to be the Borg or someone that they're bringing in for this show, it's kind of a hard question in general, but
why not bring in the
who do you think
Goa'uld?
should?
Everyone loves them.
Who would you like to? I guess in general, who would you like to see as a bad guy either come back if there was a series that did it well, like an honest person that you would like to see them continue on as a bad guy?
No, Q's fun. But
okay. You can't do.
I'd love to watch John DeLance
as a bad guy, though. I mean, it's like it's putting God as your bad guy.
See, it would be interesting to have, a season where his desires are literally just to watch what would happen if the Federation was put in an insurmountable odds that they could not deal with, and the entire universe is completely out to get them and hates them and destroys them. If they wanted to make a dystopia, that would be the way to do it.
Okay.
Because then they can do what they want. They can do what they always want to do. They're like, oh, Q snapped his fingers and it didn't happen.
Fair enough. So okay, but like a bad guy that you'd like to have either come back, or would you like a whole new bad guy?
Did we ever lose any bad guys?
I would say.
What do you mean by come
back? I think
back?
just saying like if there was not the Borg, so like the Herosian or something from Voyager or something like that. I would say if I
bring some Kazon.
God no, I hate the Kazon.
No, that's the worst.
If I was to do something, I actually would tie it into the original series and bring back the alien race from the Andromeda galaxy that were trying to invade our galaxy. Is what I would probably bring back. They were the ones that could turn you into styrofoam balls. They turned the Enterprise.
That's one of the worst episodes.
They turned the Federation, and Scotty gets them drunk, and they're like, you know what? He's like, Scotty gets him hammered on scotch, and they're like, you know what? Your Hellmans ain't so bad, and they're like, we know.
I think you make a good point.
Scotch saving the galaxy since 1840.
There was some very actually interesting one-time bad guys that they had in.
Well, they were another galaxy, and they were planning on invading. Them show up 200 years later. I'm okay with that. Like I said, I think the scope, expanding the scope of Star Trek into the
expanding the universe more, getting outside our galaxy.
Kind of throughout history, the reason Q out of all the races finds humans interesting is very much in some level parallel with SG-1, the ascending level. He actually views humans as a worthy race to join them in kind of the ascended realm. Because that's kind of what the Q continuum is.
But
it's really kind of an ascended thing. And so Q, I believe, views humans as a worthy partnership with them. That's why they want to have the baby with the humans and stuff, because they like the chaos too. See, the Q race is like the boring race, right? In all reality, when the Q were still like a flesh and blood race, we know they were like the boring race. They're like the boring aunt and uncle that hang out and you're like, oh my God, these guys are so boring. They don't do anything. They just hang out on the porch all day, every day, their entire life. And then you have the humans who are like the freaking crazy little kids, like, oh, they're blowing up the barn. And they're like, oh God, what are these doing? So I think that they love the idea of humans getting to their level, because I think they would enjoy our company, essentially. They look down on us right now, but there's also, like I said, it is very much the dog and human thing. And then at the same time, you look at my dogs, if you're like, hey, you're like talking now like a person, I kind of like that. You're pretty fun. I like you. I feel like that's kind of how they're.
Except for that Cisco. Don't get one of them Ciscos. They're mean. They punch you in the
face. Picard never punches me. So I feel like that to me would be the interesting thing. Like the Andromeda race. But like I said, Q could pop in. I think Q's always welcome. The hard part is when you only have a short season thing. Because Q's one of those ones that he's great for a long forms thing because you have 1 or 2 episodes with him being crazy and undoing stuff. I do like the idea. There is one thing that could be interesting if we were to involve Q. I would tie it a little bit, and it's a dangerous road to go down because it does go into like kind of target Ori territory. There's the Q, there's the Q race, yes, kind of, and there's the Zero race, who's the one guy who's supposedly in the books, and I think it's actually canon. Through like the authorized books, because again, canon's getting becoming so hard nowadays because everything gets retconned. But the barrier from the original trilogy is supposedly actually a defensive barrier built by the Q to defend our galaxy against other races that have nasty things to do with our galaxy. And there was specifically one specific race entity that's very similar to the Q, and he's actually locked in the center of our galaxy. In the center of the galaxy prison. So it's a little lore deep and a little abstract. But if you were to do a multi-season arc, I would say you could tie in the Andromeda group and tie it into the Zero character. I think his name is Zero. He's whatever entity that's like a non-corporeal entity.
See, but would that be Star Trek anymore?
Totally. Because it's all science nerdy. You make it again high concept, man. High concept stuff. The problem is you gotta think it out. I'm just talking top of my head. But if you start thinking this out and saying, okay, the Federation is stable. Now we have an external threat and an internal threat in our galaxy that's interfering with us. And then you got the play. Again, it's the adventure, man. The adventure, and you can have some a little bit of it's okay to have a little Indiana Jones in it, right? A little dash, right? Just a dash, right? If you want to do like a little bit of dinking around with past stuff, dude, you bring if you want to say nostalgia tour, you could do some cool stuff. You go back to the gate of time, right? The doorway of time with the thing. You go back to the Zirconian race, that one that has like the teleport anywhere in the galaxy instantaneously. They go, you know what? We got to dig up some of this old freaking technology the other races had and need to do something with it because we're freaking screwed right now. Like you do, I think the idea is that instead of putting Picard in the negative, you go, okay, everything's kind of looking good for the Federation. We're in a pretty good spot. But then something just comes in and freaking knocks us on our knees, So like the alien race comes in and almost freaking nukes the moon, just almost knocks the moon out of orbit type thing. Something that legitimately, don't destroy a planet because we've already done that, but something that actually is terrifying to the Federation that goes, oh man, we were not ready for this. And so like I said, a giant inflating feet from Andromeda, them somehow they're trying to unleash Zero into our space, that kind of thing, that maybe they know who he is, that kind of thing.
A species that neutralizes the lithium crystals.
No, that's stupid. I hate
all
this
the
stuff.
power of the Federation is gone.
I hate that crap.
It's blackout.
I know. I agree. I think it would be best just to go with the new bad guy. I think part of the difficulties with Star Trek is there's never been any overarching theme in a Star Trek television show.
It's never been about the bad guys.
Well, that's my point. It's just been episodic and people have just shown up. So if they were going to actually want to start building large themes, which I think is a great idea, it would take people with far more talent, focus, and care for the canon. Well, that's where to be able to accomplish that.
When the opening part of it, of Patrick Stewart's statement, and then we'll kind of start wrapping up here, is when he says, "Oh, the texture of the show will be different. The way it's shot is different." I'm like, that's okay. Having a little different texture and like I said, changing it up from a purely episodic style. If they made it 10 episodes that were all one story, I'm all for that. That's 2 thumbs up for me. That's 2 thumbs up. I always felt that Star Trek, one of its weakest things was we would introduce a character or a storyline in season 2, and then season 4 would be, you're like, well, that thing back there, that thing that happened like 3 months ago, that would actually be really useful right now. But everyone forgot what it was. No one knows what it is anymore.
Well, that's why everyone likes 7 of 9. 7 of 9 is the closest thing to an overarching storyline. Her as a person, her going from Borg to human is as close as Star Trek has ever
she actually
gone
makes
to a long-term
I think she's
progress.
the first character to actually accomplish anything. She made the astrometric lab in Voyager. I don't think a single character has ever made a single thing ever in history. I take it, Barclay.
Hey.
Barclay.
No, I'm not
Barclay
saying
to
that. Harry Kim helped on making the astromet.
Hologram sex doesn't count as creating something.
No. Harry Kim helped with making that with 709. Give him some darn credit.
That's because he was
Give Ensign Kim some darn
That's
credit.
because he had the hots for her, and you know what? So did everyone else on the ship.
He's like, hey, baby.
Didn't all of us?
Sorry, I only date lieutenants and higher.
He's like, son of a bitch. He's like, hey, you guys promote me right now. I need an emergency promotion right now. And they're like, sorry, man. You won't.
No, it's going to Tom Paris, but we're going to take it away in about 2 episodes, and he's going to get it again still before he's ever
You're
become
like, all
anything.
you've done has been the most model ensign on the history.
Wait, was
and
he
he's a bridge?
Was he a captain?
Captain?
Was he a captain at the end in the final episode of
Yeah, but he
Voyager?
was like a baby
captain.
captain. Like, we gave you like a shuttlecraft to captain, and you're like, oh, poor Harry.
We gave you an what was the Oberon
No, it
class?
looked like an Excelsior class that had been updated for the 24th century, but she made sure to steal that from him too. So she's like, I can't let you be a captain.
Harry, you're not allowed to be captain. Poor guy. She's
like, you're captain now. I'm still
the
an
most
admiral,
loyal guy freaking on the ship, probably, other than like Tuvok. He's like, they're like, yeah, I'm the actual Federation officer. I went to Stargate Academy. I'm actually a bridge officer and ensign. 7 years later, yeah, still an ensign. And they're like, dude.
Well, Captain Janeway told me there were no positions available because, it's a small ship.
Poor Harry, man.
And there's nowhere really to go.
He's for Harry.
I'd be like, really? Okay, everyone becomes lieutenant now. And so when they get back to Starfleet, they can all pick whatever post they want.
There's still seniority. There's still like, hey, I'm a senior one. You can still make seniority and be like, yeah, you know what?
Oh yeah, exactly.
Well, especially like at least make him higher than some of the marquee members. The marquee people. It's like, okay, maybe not, I get it, maybe not Chakotay.
All the marquee people were above him. Every single one.
Every single one was above him.
Every character above him.
You're like, well, they got engineering skills and you don't,
right?
Harry.
So anyway,
you might as well have been on deck 14.
Right? So, all right. So that's all our predictions. I think our thoughts on it. I know it's a long and arduous conversation on Star Trek. Like I said, Star Trek was, for me, one of my favorite shows growing up. Different for all of us because we have different, Philip said Stargate was his favorite. But it'll always have a special place in my heart. And so, in the end, my fingers are crossed that maybe we'll get something good. Is it, likely? I would not bet again. I would not bet for.
So
yeah, I would not put money.
So tender.
But, hey, maybe we'll get something that's not horrendous. Again, not likely, but that's how it goes sometimes. Any final little words from the little brothers?
Yeah. I mean, I think the part that actually frustrates me the most is that I don't think nobody would know who Patrick Stewart was other than people who are super fans of Broadway and sort of things like that. If it wasn't for Star Trek bringing him into the Hollywood world to see these types of things, and for him to then come back to the country that gave him one of his greatest opportunities and the television show to give him one of his greatest opportunities to then spit in its eye, in its face, and at half the audience that would see it to want to push his political objective, A, for Brexit, and then B, having, Trump in office. It just goes to show you that these people just do not care about what they're producing as long as it services their agendas. And it's a shame because you want to like these people, you want to enjoy them and say, hey, they did great job. But then when you see people like William Shatner go over there and say, hey, I like these guys' things and I would never want to push people away and we want to help and bring people together and be, to unify and stuff like that. It really shows you that there are people who do care, who are invested, and it's better to look for those people first than to be worried about people who don't care anymore, are super duper rich, and are just going to finish up here and then go and finish their lives in their chateau and in their beautiful little places. And I hope that people would realize there's no reason to support these people. You don't have to have some kind of diehard connection and attachment. Become fans of things that are good. Don't just be a fan for the sake of being a fan. I like Star Trek. I've always enjoyed Star Trek, and I would call myself a fan of Star Trek. But when the things deteriorate and fall apart, you're not a fan if you blindly follow and just take whatever they take because of Star Wars. That makes you a dumb sheep, and you don't want to be a dumb sheep. Be an intelligent, critical thinking fan, and if they take things that you value and destroy it, say, nope, stop, nope, no more, heed, and then make them change it. Because if you don't, you're not going to get anything different. And either you have two choices. You have to completely abandon it like we are, or I should say as I am, or you slowly let that drivel seep into your mind, and it will change the way you think and process and view the world. That's what media is for. That's what it does. So I would just be conscientious of that, and that's where I would put it. Don't waste your time, but if you are going to waste your time, give it some critical thinking and really tear it apart and settle in your mind if you want junk or you want good stuff.
Excellent words. Go ahead, Christopher.
Yeah, I think in kind of paralleling what you're saying, Philip, I think a big thing to remember is, especially right now with, these people always trying to come out against fandom and saying like, oh, you guys are being, rude or just you're complaining all the time and the rest of it. What it really is, a fan is like a good friend. A good friend doesn't let you do bad things. A good friend will tell you when you're being an idiot. A good friend will slap you around when you're doing something wrong. And that's what fans are. We're people who care about this thing so immensely that it's not, if we're being critical, it's because we care and we don't want it to go to a bad place. Or like Philip said, we don't want to go to that point where we finally go, I no longer want to watch this. I know for myself, for a lot of Star Trek stuff, I think I watched a little bit longer or tried to last a little bit longer than you guys did when Enterprise first came out. I think you guys pretty much gave it like 2 episodes.
No, I watched the first 2 seasons.
Okay. So, and I think I got maybe a little bit into season 3, but it's like, so for me, I know, like, especially for me, I'd say, I have to agree with Philip. I think in a little bit, since I think my favorite sci-fi show is probably Stargate SG-1. I think it's just on a different level, and it's on a very realistic level that I think the other ones just don't have, and it's just great for being that. But beyond that, we've all grown up with Star Trek. We've all loved Star Trek. I've loved Star Trek. Wrath of Khan is my favorite out of all the movies, always will be. There's no better Star Trek movie, I think, out there at all. Even if you try to pretend that it's not going to be a Khan movie and then have Khan still show up, Benedict Cumberbatch. But so no, it's not Khan. I'm Khan. You sure it wasn't Khan? It was a Khan.
You're right.
So I'd say that's the biggest thing, though. Like, yeah, I agree with Philip. I don't want to get to this place where I finally have to go, I really don't want to hear anything about it. And I'm already at that place a little bit for Star Trek. Again, it's like, it's the same way I am in a lot of fandoms for Star Trek and Star Wars, for sure. Because it's like, I like the originals. And I pretty much have to stop about there, if I really want to enjoy it anymore. And I don't want that to be the case. Like you guys said, I hope Picard is something decent, but just already from what's been said, what they're talking about, and the tone they're going for, it's just not. I don't think it's going to be anything that captures the same imagination and joy that we all three got from the originals and watching them.
Yeah, I agree.
Have you actually ever seen all the originals, Christopher?
Yeah, I've seen all of them. Probably what is it? 5 is probably the one I've seen the last.
Oh,
or
the
6
movies? Oh yeah,
yeah.
Freaking after.
Oh, it's not I meant the television series.
Yeah, I've watched all the television. I still have all 3 sets of the DVDs that Dad bought. Remember, it's like all the different colors, the 3-colored ones. Yeah,
gotcha. Yeah, I remember watching through all the Star Trek movies after 4, and
those were bad.
Those are one-time watches.
If you're good.
The motion
if someone's
picture
made
was crap.
this long into our video today, I know it's been long into our journey, but if you like this, you might hopefully enjoyed our talk about it. If you have not watched a lot of Star Trek movies, when it comes to the original movies, do not watch 1, which is the motion picture. Skip that because it's awful. But watch Wrath of Khan.
And you don't need to watch it.
Watch Wrath of Khan, Search for Spock, Voyage Home. Those are the original trilogy movies that are good. The next 2 are just bad. And then come back and watch Generations. Generations is a okay movie. And then First Contact is like what is right there with Wrath of Khan. Someone can argue it that if someone says, Wrath of Khan is my favorite movie, And then someone else came to me and said, no, you're wrong. First Contact is. I go, you know what? They're so close to my book that your opinion on which one's better is totally okay. Now, if someone said the motion picture is the greatest one of them, I would be like, well, I'm sorry, you have terrible taste. Moving on. But
like Insurrection, GTFO. You're like, get out of here.
Insurrection's better than freaking 5, 6, and 5. Insurrection was just a badly concept. It wasn't the worst. Nemesis was far worse than that because the concept behind it was stupid. But anyway, so everyone, thank you for joining us on our.
But big ships.
Thank you for joining. It was cool seeing the Enterprise East crashing that thing. That was cool. But everyone, thank you for joining us. This was our inaugural episode of Brotherly Predictions. And so we have many predictions out there and many thoughts on it as the show.
We need to get a jingle for that.
As the show continues, we'll update on our thoughts if any of us watch it. I think we'll probably end up waiting till it's almost over, to be honest. So we probably won't get back to us about 2 months, most likely. I apologize for that, but we don't have time for that. We got anime to watch. I mean, at least I do.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
So thank you for joining us. Please like and subscribe and have an awesome day.